Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland front of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers have not one, not two, but three members now that have won a championship as members of the of the Cavaliers, not Cleveland Cavaliers.
You blew it.
I
blew it.
I blew it, Carter.
And this is live to tape. We could pretend like you didn't, but I don't think we should.
I don't think we should either. It is, that's going against the spirit of what this is. And I'm just so excited. The Cleveland Cavaliers added DeAndre Hunter at the trade deadline, sending out Karis LeVert, George Niang, 2 second-round picks, as well as 2 pick swaps.
3 second-round picks.
3 second-round picks, thank you. To get DeAndre Hunter on this team, someone that I have kind of been fawning for a while, wanting to see him as a member of the team, thinking that, this might be a really good fit and potentially address a need that isn't there. But Carter, before we get there, we need to talk about what happened last game, because Darius Garland hit a game-winning shot from the logo.
Yeah, and a game where they nearly choked it away. The most beautiful counter. Kenny said that he drew up the play for Sam, and if you actually go back and watch, Sam was open on the wing, though I think Darius made the right play both in hindsight and even with the benefit of really looking at how he would have had to make those plays, and obviously one of those iconic moments for the team, going on good vibes into the deadline, and then obviously you make this big trade. So amazing moment for Darius, and the revenge season continues.
Yeah, really nice to see him hit that shot. Nice to get that win. I was a little worried with it being 3-4. Second night of a back-to-back. Detroit was rested. That they're going to play very physically. This is a team that's beaten Boston, or at least taken them to overtime. That's beaten some good teams. So I thought that was a really good win to get. But you're right. Like the most exciting thing right now is the trade deadline. And before we get into DeAndre Hunter and his fit with the team, I do think we owe it to both Karis LeVert and George Niang to kind of talk about them no longer being with the team.
Yeah, dude, it's like you build a team out of really good dudes, and that's awesome. And we talk about how fun it is to root for a team of good dudes, and then you have to send those good dudes away sometimes, or they go say goodbye for free agency, or whatever it may be. And it's like, it is hard, Niang is obviously one of the most beloved guys in the locker room. Karis, super well-liked as well. Was both of them model citizens while they were in Cleveland. Karis is a hometown boy. He went to my high school, Pickerington Central. Those guys acquitted themselves really well here. It will be a test of the team's culture to kind of see how they operate with these kind of beloved figures no longer in the locker room with them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what both of them deserve a lot of credit for is, I don't think you could accuse either of them of not putting maximum effort into fitting in with the team. Karis LeVert has changed his game a lot since he came to Cleveland from Indiana. This year, playing even less with the ball in his hands, which is kind of been his bread and butter throughout his career. He's been someone that will run pick and rolls, that's able to create shots for himself off the dribble. He changed that part of his game. He increased his 3-point volume. He really committed to the defensive end of the floor. For the most part, he's been playing as a very efficient player for the team. And I understand, the last couple of games have been rough coming back from that right wrist injury. I have to assume that is still a little bit of a factor for him. But Karis has been really important, man. Like, I honestly think that he's been underappreciated throughout his time from some of the fans with the way that he's talked about, because there are sometimes those ups and downs with his offensive game. But he's been really, really important for them weathering the storm, with the injuries that they've had over the years, with Donovan missing time, with Darius missing time. those were often the moments where he would really step up and shine, where he would really come through and deliver and give them playmaking and ball handling that they desperately needed. So to see him go, obviously, I'll get to George next, but I just wanted to kind of highlight Karras as, the one that's been here for the longest out of the two.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that mostly has a ton of longevity, I think someone tweeted we're down to 5 guys left from the play-in team from 3 years ago. I want to say it's Darius, Donovan, or actually no,
Dean.
Donovan wasn't there yet. So it was Darius, Isaac, Dean, Evan, and Jarrett.
Yeah.
For as much turnover happens in the league, it's rare to have as many guys around as long as the Cavs have. But yeah, it's a huge bummer to see Karras go, and he was really important for them, both in the regular season and, he was one of the only guys who did have a good series against the Knicks. I think some of that gets forgotten because that series went so poorly. And then, then moving over to George, in a lot of ways was one of those guys. He had some of those Channing Frye vibes for this team where he would, he brought an edge, but also brought a humor, was clearly one of the most beloved guys in the locker room right away. I think he's kind of going to always be one of those guys. No matter where he goes, he's got that kind of energy. And yeah, for a team of nice young men, he's the guy who is willing to scrap, talk a little trash. I think about me and you sitting next to each other at Game 1 against Orlando, and how much freaking fun that was watching him get into it with Mo Wagner and all that fun stuff of and I think that the team, especially at that point, really could have used that edge, needed that edge. So I thought it was really, really special.
Obviously, what he is able to do off court, in the locker room, just the post game interviews with Tristan, I'm really going to miss that. That always gets talked about, but I think it also deserves to be mentioned just how much work he put into bouncing back this season. I thought that he's had an incredibly effective year. You can tell the work that he put into to get into better conditioning and be ready for this season. I thought, he's been one of the more reliable players for the Cavs from an availability standpoint, right? Like he's always
the most.
Yeah, like he's someone that's always going to be in the lineup, and getting that 3-point percentage back up to 40%. I thought he's done a good job. Despite limitations, competing on defense this year. He's had some good moments on that end of the court, and even just the connective playmaking and just his understanding of where he fits within the offense, I thought was a lot better this year. So to see both of them go, it is a little bit bittersweet. One of the I think it makes us better podcasters, and I think it makes us better fans that sometimes we are lucky enough to get to talk to these guys, because we view the team and the team building like it humanizes them even more. And I'm going to remember talking to Georgia on media day, and getting to talk to Karras, and just a great personality. And I think as much as I'm excited for what I believe is a roster upgrade, and I'm excited about the added flexibility that the Cavs have, and I'm excited about what they gave up, or what they didn't give up rather. I think it's going to be tough. Like I think there is going to be a bit of an adjustment period for the locker room when you lose two pieces that by all accounts they really like those guys.
Yeah, and this is where I always go back to because this was kind of the big thing talked about the Cavs going to the trade deadline, whether it was Cam Johnson, whether it was Hunter, whether it was anyone, is it worth messing with your chemistry to make a move like this? And, what I think is really important to say is this is why your top guys have to set your chemistry. At the end of the day, you need your leaders on your team, your best players on your team to be the ones who set the culture, because the middle and end of your roster are just going to move around. They just are. And that's always been the case. It will always be the case that that I just don't know if there's any way around that in the end. And so this is a test for the top guys. Just say, hey, we lost 2 beloved teammates, but we're adding a good dude in. We're adding Ty Jerome's bestie, a Virginia Cavalier through and through. So, I think I'm not. While I think there will be an adjustment, like this is why you build a team out of the kind of dudes the Cavs have targeted, because they should be able to weather these kinds of bumps and bruises and changes to the team dynamic, because they're all good dudes and know how to work together and have a lot of experience playing together. This isn't a group that was vibing for half a season and then everything got changed. I think about those Phoenix Suns with like Kelly Oubre in the bubble, and the Valley kind of guys. Like that was like their thing, but it hadn't been around long enough, for them to like necessarily have something ingrained. The Cavs have something ingrained here, and they are adding a heck of a player.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that Kobe Altman is willing to be aggressive. He is willing to shake things up and is ultimately going to do what he believes is best for the team. And I think the last couple of years, there's been a lot of calls for changes, right? Whether it's the core, whether it's the supporting cast, there's been a lot of kind of outside noise about not making changes, not making moves at the last couple deadlines. And the refrain that we've heard is, hey, the Cavs have been looking for options. They've been looking to improve the roster. They did not feel that there was an upgrade available. They did not feel that there was better than a lateral move available. They're not going to break up the core just to add a wing because that's a valuable archetype. We're not going to move Karis LeVert just to make a move. And I think it's very clear, sending out 2 beloved locker room guys, that Kobe believed that this was a move that's going to make a difference, that this is something that, benefits them both this season and benefits them in the future, because this is someone that's locked up under term for the next couple of years. There's a sizable investment there from a contract standpoint. They believe that this is going to be part of their, run for the next 3 years. I don't want to say part of the core, because I think the core is limited to 4. But when you have DeAndre Hunter, when you have Max Strus, when you have Isaac Okoro, all locked up for the next 3 years, they're likely going to be a part of this here. You have not only your top end talent locked up, but you have probably your most important role players for the most part locked up.
You at least know what you have. You're not in a space where you're like, well, I hope that who we have around is good 2 years from now, because for the most part, you just have a very clear landscape, which a lot of teams just don't get to say they have. And again, I just got to give so much credit to the front office, because this is a great deal, Justin. I think we have to start there. We can dive into the Hunter on-court impact, the ways he's going to help, the ways that maybe the Cavs are going to have to adjust. But like, I think you really do have to start with, they didn't give up their 2031 first round pick, which is the only first rounder they had available to trade. They didn't give up Jalen Tyson, their rookie, who was probably the best like unknown asset that they had. They don't give up Isaac Okoro, who's their best point of attack defender and a specialist they just locked up, and a guy they drafted and have invested significant time and playing and development equity into. And they give up 3 seconds, which seconds aren't nothing, but they are often
they're fun coupons.
Yeah, they're fun coupons generally. And the Cavs have done so well at finding undrafted guys that I'm certainly not as worried about it as I might be otherwise. And then you go to the 2 swaps, and I go, wow. So we didn't give up 2031, but we give up 2 swaps. But Brian
Did you assume that it was 2030 and 2031 when you first saw the news?
Yeah, I thought probably. And then, Brian Windhorst reports shortly after the deal that it's 2026 and 2028. And if you are an astute Cavaliers observer, you might know that they already swapped those picks with the Utah Jazz in the Donovan Mitchell trade. And so what they ended up doing, for those who are unfamiliar, and the Suns actually were the ones who kind of started pioneering this in their desperation to kind of leverage extra assets when they were kind of leveraged out, is they were trading swaps on swaps. So basically what the Cavs have done is say, we agree to take the worst of the 3 picks between our pick, Utah, and now Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's nice about that from a risk perspective is the reason swaps are scary is because you could bottom out. You could kind of collapse, and give a first or second overall pick to a contender or to your trade partner, right?
Yeah.
So that's the downside. However, when you've already agreed to do that, the downside goes from, oh man, we would have had pick 3, but now we have pick 14. Now it's like, well, we already weren't gonna have that good of a pick anyway.
The floor of the scenario is already in place, right?
Yes.
Like your worst case scenario is always going to be going to the Jazz. So you're not really adding a lot of extra risks. What it basically means is Utah would need to finish higher than Cleveland in the standings in order for the Cavs pick to go to Utah, and Cavs would take Utah's pick. If the Cavs finish better than Utah, but they finish with a worse record than the Atlanta Hawks, then they swap picks with the Atlanta Hawks. I'm dubious about the ability for the Utah Jazz or Atlanta Hawks to finish higher in the standings than the Cavs either of those years. But like you said, the worst case scenario is already baked into those swaps. And I think the worst case scenario was Donovan's not staying with the team. And we know that Donovan is staying with the team. We know that he's locked in here. We know that we have a very good team locked in. And I'm blown away. I'm blown away by this. I think there were other ways to make this deal work potentially with smaller salaries, cobbling some of those together to potentially make it work. But including George Niang, what it did was it got the Cavs under the luxury tax as well, which stops the repeater clock from starting this year. Assuming that they manage to stay under the luxury tax for the remainder of the season, it gives them access to the full mid-level exception this summer. So not only do you have guys locked up from your, as far as role players go, you have the ability to make a competitive offer for an additional one if you want. You can go out and address a need. You still have that first round pick if you need to consolidate role players again in the future. Hey,
or if you just need to make the pick because you need young, cost-controlled assets.
Right. I'm just thinking about these next 3 years. Who knows how long we're going to live, man? Like let's focus on this run. You have the ability to still use that. We saw how helpful that is for the Lakers after not giving that up in the Luka Doncic pick. They were able to go get their center with that 2031 pick. So I think they have left themselves in a position where they have even more flexibility than they did going into the trade deadline, and they improve the roster. And we thought of it as an either or. This trade scenario, honestly, is one of those that if you put it into the trade machines or whatever, and you posted the screenshot, people would tell you that it's not realistic. You are achieving 2 of your goals and you're not giving up either of your major assets. And I think you and I, when we saw the rumors of DeAndre Hunter or Cam Johnson, we assumed either Jalen Tyson or that first round pick is going to be in there. And I think an important thing additionally, when you're talking about, hey, matching salary to make it work with Hunter, Dean Wade wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important because when we were at the trade deadline last year, what you heard about the Brooklyn asks were they really value Dean Wade. They see that he's a valuable player. He can replace Dorian Finney-Smith. And we're sitting there, we're like, are we sure Dorian Finney-Smith is better than Dean Wade? Is it enough of an upgrade to add assets to it? He's also getting paid more. Like, we don't even know if he's a better player. Like, that's not giving up Dean Wade in this, I think, is also really important and needs to be noted because now you have that insurance. Now you have that depth at the backup power forward position that you simply did not have before.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, like more kudos to the front office and Mike Yancey and Kobe Altman on this, which is that not only was Dean Wade not in the trade, that actually put Atlanta back into the tax. Yeah. So they then had to make a series of transactions that maybe they were already going to make, who knows? But that in any negotiation is going to be held against me. Like, oh, I'm going to give me Dean. I don't want George. I want Dean because you can still make the salary work and I don't have to go in the tax. Why don't you figure out your own tax? So like the fact that the Cavs don't have to bring in a third team, they don't have to make another move. They don't need to, dump a Sam Merrill or Craig Porter Jr. or whoever, or like a helpful guy that matters to them, either now or into the future, to dodge the taxes. Like so important, I feel.
It really is, and I think beyond the flexibility aspects, what I'm most excited about is I just feel like this is exactly what we were hoping for this offseason. This is exactly what we were hoping for heading into this deadline, which is retaining a lot of your talent and just redistributing it. You had a lot of depth at the guard positions, at the 2-3 archetype, and you kind of consolidate that and you get yourself that 3-4. That legitimate forward, 6'8", 7'2" wingspan. He's a strong player as well. It just makes the roster make more sense. It gives Kenny Atkinson lineup versatility. He has more tools in his tool belt that he can go to. And I think that there's the potential that it's going to put other players that are already in the roster into a better context as well. And honestly, I think one of the most important things to making this trade possible is the fact that Ty Jerome has been as good as he has been. Because I think if you don't have that additional ball handler that's established himself as one of the best six men in the league, that has stepped up every single time one of Darius or Donovan gets a rest game or whatever the case is, or if they're out with illness, he has stepped up and performed even better. I think you get a little queasy about giving up the ball handling of Karis LeVert if you don't have someone that can step up and play in that exact same role. And I think, as unfortunate as it's been to have Karis out with the wrist injury, you kind of got to
your proof of concept.
Yeah, you get a proof of concept and you get to test run. Hey, like, this is our worst case scenario, that we send LeVert out and we don't have the guy that we're getting in return yet. What does this look like? And what it looked like in that spot was Ty Jerome playing really well, and Craig Porter Jr. has gone in a couple minutes and looked pretty good in his last couple showings.
Yeah. So, I think that's really the biggest case against this, at least on the court, is, hey, Karis was your great class in case of emergency playmaker. He was the guy who, we talked a lot about going into the end of the season about wanting more and more guys who could initiate, and Karis can do that, and he can do it better than Hunter. I think that's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
But you have found it in enough spots. Evan took a big leap as a playmaker and as a play initiator. Darius recaptured his form and then took another leap. Donovan is playmaking as well as he's ever playmade. Obviously, Ty Jerome. Max Strus showed last year that he's a better playmaker than either of us knew. So you do worry about it a little bit. But the reality is, the best I thought Karis looked this season was when he was just killing it as an off-ball shooter, breaking his historical norm, because that's not been his thing, but he was doing a really, really great job at it earlier in the year. So, I just feel like we went from a guy who was doing a great job, doing a somewhat not natural role for him, to the guy who just does that thing in Hunter.
He really does. He takes about 6 threes a game. 5 of them are catch and shoots. As a 3-point shooter, he's someone that can shoot from every spot around the arc too, right? Like, he's not just a corner specialist. He shoots just as well above the break as he does from the corners. And, 39.3 overall from 3, 39.3 on catch and shoot threes, 38% on pull-up threes. Like, he is just a consistent shooter, not a super high volume, but high enough that you have to account for him. And,
what a charmed life for DeAndre Hunter, by the way. Plays with Ty Jerome in college, then goes and gets to play with Trae Young, who just spoon feeds you open threes. And now he gets to play with Darius Garland, who spoon feeds you open threes.
Yeah, and Donovan's pretty great at spraying out to the 3-point line as well, right? There's a lot of intelligent passers. Even Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are very, very talented playmakers. And I think that's one of the biggest differences of going to DeAndre Hunter on kind of potential negative side is he's not a strong playmaker. I think he's probably the weakest playmaker on the roster, at least historically. When you look at kind of those assist percentage numbers, he's going to be a play.
He's got about a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
He is going to be a play finisher, right? He's someone that is going to take those open shots. He's not going to hesitate to take those open shots. He can do a little bit of, the pick and roll ball handling and stuff like that, but that is not what he is. That's not his primary strength, and I don't think that that's going to be what he's asked to do on the Cavs. So I'm really interested, because when you look at his strengths, it really complements what the main guys are going to do, and that's exciting to me.
Yeah, man. He's a really interesting player. I just think, I guess now's the time. Just, what is DeAndre Hunter as a player? So I think some people are going to be a little surprised that have not watched him particularly closely. And I won't pretend like I've, been, had the craziest scout of DeAndre Hunter, but you hear 3 and D thrown around a lot. He is, I think, much more 3 than D right now. He is a functional, helpful defender. He is not one of these impact defenders who's going to blow up a game plan. I don't think that's who he is. Not a super high steal rate, not a super high block rate, but does okay on isolations and on switches, which I think is actually a really good schematic fit for this team, that where maybe it wasn't such a good schematic fit for Atlanta, because the reality is Atlanta doesn't get to switch, because they have Trae Young, who they didn't really feel safe switching. And I tend to agree with that. So a lot of being an Atlanta defender is being in rotation, scrambling, doing that kind of stuff. And I don't really think Hunter is excellent at that, but what he is a big, long body that isn't going to be in the wrong place over and over again. And when you switch a lot, as the Cavs have been switching a lot, I do think it simplifies your job a little bit. And, the job is, don't get beat so bad that the help can't get there in time. Yeah. It's not even don't get beat, just don't get beat so bad. And I think that length buys him a little margin for error on that end. And so I've seen some people worried about the defense. First off, I just don't think he's replacing Karras and George, who are solid, functional defenders when they're on and not that great when they're off on that end of the floor. So I'm not super worried about that. On the other end of the floor, he definitely is not, I saw someone in our Discord kind of talked about him as like maybe a lob threat. That's not really his game. He is I think he's a little bit more like Michael Porter Jr.-y as a scorer, where a lot of it is he's really tall, he's really long, and he has a nice jumper. And that kind of is the foundation for his game. It's not that he can't dunk. He'll and he's yammed on some guys, but a lot of, if you just look through his attempts, a lot of when he does get 2 feet in the paint, a lot of it is floaters, a lot of it is, pull up jumpers, and he can be efficient on those just because he's big and tall. And some shots like that are harder for a guy who's 6'4", 6'5", are just easier for a guy who's 6'8", but he is not like an above the rim player.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen for the Cavs this season is a lot of guys are having the best season of their career because their roles have been simplified. Kenny Atkinson has distilled what is asked of them down to their strengths, and I just think that is a potential situation that can continue this great season that DeAndre Hunter's having, because right now he's second in from an odds standpoint for sixth man of the year. He's been coming off the bench, averaging 19 points per game. He's shooting well from the floor. He's shooting well from three. And I just think that he is going to slot into this role really well. He's going to have what he is asked to do is going to be simplified. And I love having my workload simplified, Carter. That's why I love Zoom AI Companion, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Man, go ahead.
What?
Go ahead. I'm geeked.
I'm excited too. And what excites me is this is someone that is very good at scoring off of handoffs. He's in the 93rd percentile scoring off of handoffs. We know that the Cavs are going to use that a fair amount. He is 84th percentile in transition. Cavs like to get out and run. He's someone that can finish in those spots. It's kind of similar to Isaac Okoro. Actually, you know, from an athleticism standpoint, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Okoro, where they can get up, but they're not that super quick, bouncy, very vertical type athlete. Hunter's able to play just a little more above the rim because he's massive. Because he is a very, very, very large dude, and that is going to help him finish dunks more frequently than Isaac's able to. But what I also like is he's 70th percentile on post-ups. And given how much teams switch and try to throw length on the Cavs guards, I'm very interested to see if that is something we try to take advantage of the quick post up. You are not going to be able to hide that smaller guard. You're not going to be able to hide Jalen Brunson on the small forward, which the Knicks have repeatedly done when you play the Cavs. Even if it's Max Strus who can shoot, they're going to live with that, with you know, Brunson being there because, hey, let's get OG Anunoby, let's get Mikal Bridges onto the Cavs guards. Is that something that the Cavs can take advantage of and use that a little more frequently than the Hawks even did? I'm interested to see that. 62nd percentile as a spot up shooter. That's really great to see. You know, he's not the best shooter in the league, but as we said with the 3-point percentages, he's very, very reliable from a variety of different spots. But as I said before, he is not someone that is going to create a lot for others. He is not I think it's safe to say that he's probably the worst passer on the team, at least for what he's shown to this point of his career. He's not a very good isolation scorer, 35th percentile there.
The handle is not tight.
Yes.
And because he's not an explosive athlete, he can't just turn the corner. Like if you watch the Cavs games against the Hawks earlier in the year, there were a lot of his ISO possessions came against Jalen Tyson, who D'd him the hell up. He got up into his space, and Hunter could not turn the corner on him.
Yeah, and I almost wonder, because he's going to be in this play finishing role and he's going to be spacing the floor a lot, I just think it's going to leave Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell with even more space to create, because you're not going to have these kind of record scratch, freewheeling, isolation type possessions that can kind of gum up things offensively. This is a guy that's going to confidently take whatever shot you give him, even if it's okay. I'm getting a quick, someone's closing out on me quickly. He's able to put the ball on the floor for one dribble and
it's a straight line. It's a straight line driver.
Yeah, and he's very good with those kind of pull-up shots. He's able to shoot over a lot of guys with the length that he has and the wingspan that he has. So I'm very, very interested to see how this fits. And like I said before, we'll get into it a little later. But I think the trickle-down effect that this could have on the roster and the rotation is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. He's a really helpful scorer, and he just gets a lot of buckets just from being tall. Like, you mentioned the post-up numbers. Something I noticed while watching a lot of film this afternoon was he is a really nice drifter along the baseline. If you're falling asleep, he's just going to duck in, catch it on the block, and just hit a quick floater. Again, not dunking. He's just not going to do that very often unless he's got 2-3 steps towards the hoop already and ahead of steam. But like there's some of those plays where, you get a little dump off because he found some open space under the hoop that maybe you're a little smaller. You have to pump fake and see if you can get someone up. See if you might have to reset as the defense collapses and try to do a kick out. He can just get higher faster because he's a big dude. So you have that. You also really notice the size on the jumper. I know you don't typically like this because it's been weaponized against us a little bit, which is that, feeling like smaller dudes closing out isn't as impactful as taller dudes closing out. And, the numbers probably still say you're right and I'm wrong. But I do notice that he has more jumpers where he is kind of on his own vertical plane on the release. So even if he's being closed out at, he is in a different airspace than the opposition. He's got a high release. He is a jump shooter. He's not one of these set shot kind of guys. And I think there's something to that. I know it's a I know it's a touchy subject for you, but I do think there's value in that.
And you know how defensive and emotional I can get. But I think it's fair to say that if you are talking about a player's ability to shoot over a late contest, they're going to have an easier time if that player is shorter than them, right? Like I think the amount of we can't play defense with a short player gets insanely overstated.
Sure.
Actually, you know what? This is a great time to mention this. Guess what? Because the conversation again after that Boston game was Jason Tatum, you know, they hunt Darius on every single matchup. Tatum can get the shots and shoot over him whenever he wants. Do you know what Tatum is shooting against Garland this year?
I do, because I've got the rundown open.
9 of 24. He's shooting 9 of 24. And here's the thing when it comes to that. I will continue to say the Cavs will live with this. Tatum is not a good mid-range shooter. He's in the 38th percentile as a mid-range shooter. If Tatum gets the switch onto Garland and that's what baits him into 16-foot jump shots, even if he shot 12 of 24, even if he shot 50%, I will live over that, over open catch and shoot buckets versus Boston. And I think the important thing too is if he ever is using his length to get to the basket, Evan Mobley or Jared Allen will be there to defend that. I will absolutely live with that.
Yeah, and back to the DeAndre Hunter podcast. You psycho.
You know what? I didn't even intentionally really do that. It's just so funny that moments after you say you get a little sensitive on the subject.
You get sensitive on the subject.
I get damn sensitive on the subject. Yeah. Look at that.
But you know, I do think like having more positional size is nice. It's really something I've missed ever since the Lowry trade, sending him out, which is that, you know, and one of the reasons I've liked Dean at the 3 so much. And, you know, I think Hunter can provide a lot of the things that Dean provides in terms of allowing you to switch and still having 2 big bodies adjacent to the rim. And it's one of those things where I think metric folks will go, oh, well, his rim protection data isn't that good. And that's fine. And I don't think Lauri Markkanen's was that good before coming here. But all you got to do is be annoying enough to let someone come help on this team. Like, I just think it is, I don't know if there's an easy, like, there are better defensive teams than the Cavs, especially this season. I want to say they're up to 8th, maybe. Maybe they're still at 9th. But I don't know if there's an easier team to play defense on than the Cavs, in the sense of, as long as you just do your job to the best of your ability, the defense generally is going to be able to accommodate that.
Yeah.
You know, like, the defense did not crater when George Niang was out there because the overall shell is strong enough. And that's even, and almost all of George's minutes are coming with only one of Evan or Jared on the floor. DeAndre will have the luxury of probably both those guys a lot more than George ever did. So I think being big, being long, and just don't mess up so bad is really your job. And he's going to be additive just by being big, tall, long, and relatively athletic.
Yeah, I think so often we look at stats and we remove them from the context. We assume that it's going to be the same in every single situation. And I think bringing up Lauri Markkanen, who was a negative defender, but was able to play alongside both of those bigs and have a very good defense. Karis LeVert had the reputation of being a negative defender before he came to the Cavs. And, you know, some of that I think was an increase of effort. But I think some of that was the infrastructure for the Cavs. I think DeAndre Hunter in a vacuum is a better defender than Karis LeVert. I think he is also a bigger, longer defender than Karis LeVert. I think maybe Karis might be better when you talk about defending like a point guard. But I've seen Hunter thrown on Darius and giving him trouble at times. I've seen
and Kenny doesn't want to hide Darius anyway. He said it himself.
Right. So I think Hunter is someone that's a solid defender that's going to look even better within the context of this team. Like, you talk about how he's probably going to get the opportunity to play with both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. If we're talking about this team when fully healthy, there's a chance when he's only playing with one of them, he's also playing with Dean Wade at power forward. That is a very, very... That is what I'm getting really excited about, is if you're talking about this team fully healthy, whether you start Hunter or not, which we can get into next, whether you start Hunter or not, your first stagger with one of the guards and one of the bigs, you can very easily have Max Strus at shooting guard, DeAndre Hunter at the 3, and Dean Wade at the 4. That is a massive lineup that is full of two-way players that can shoot around a dynamic, generator of the offense and a terrific play finisher at center. You can get into 48 minutes of hell with the Cavs pretty damn easily.
Yeah, the lineups should just get better. And there's also, by the way, especially on the defensive end of the floor, because there's also a knock-on effect where a guy like Isaac Okoro is opened up to play some of these minutes that Karras was playing at the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Cavs have, Okoro, Wade, Mobley, Allen. I think those are the 4 best defenders on the team. Not ranked, just those are your 4 really good defenders, really helpful defenders, where almost every time when they're on the floor, your metrics are going to be good. And I think Hunter is right on the periphery of that, depending on context. And the idea that you can have 3 of Wade, Mobley, Allen, Okoro, Hunter on the floor at almost any time that's just a lot of length and physicality and point of attack defense and switchiness for teams to deal with. I just, man, it just feels like, I always felt, especially when Dean's hurt, that all right, 2 bigs were a crazy defensive team, and then once the one big goes off, it just kind of just feels less imposing. And the data hasn't always proven that, so this is somewhat of a feel thing. I just feel like they can always have a physically imposing lineup on the floor.
Yeah, if they choose to, they absolutely can. And when I had Esper Henny on the podcast, we talked a little bit briefly about Hunter, and he was mentioning how, coming in off the bench, keeping him at 28 minutes has really kind of breathed new life into him. He was forced into that 6-man role last year when he got hurt and Jalen Johnson emerged. And, keeping him at that kind of 28-minute mark has kept him fresh. He's not having that wear and tear on the knee. And that is exactly what you're going to be dealing with the Cavs, because they have a lot of depth.
Their starters don't play 28 minutes.
Yeah, he's going to be in a great situation here. So when you look at his 28 minutes per game, where he's averaging 19 points in 28 minutes, which is phenomenal, George is playing 21 for them. He can eat George's minutes very easily. And then I think when it comes to Karras's minutes, you're basically taking whatever minutes Karras was playing at small forward, and you're giving that to DeAndre Hunter. You're taking the shooting guard minutes, and you are adding that to Isaac Okoro's minutes, and you're adding that to Ty Jerome's minutes, in my opinion. When this team is fully healthy, I think that's how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I just don't think Donovan plays any point guard anymore.
It's very possible. I mean? So
I think that that was still a thing where Ty might play 7, 8, 9 minutes. I think Ty just becomes a 15 to 20 minute player, and Donovan eats a lot more. If Donovan's playing 30, he's playing 31.3 minutes a game. I think he will play 31.3 minutes at shooting guard.
Yeah, and I think Max's minutes are going to come down a little bit too. I think he's going to play a little more shooting guard than he has. I think everyone's minutes are going to come down just a little bit because they have so much depth, right? If you're talking about what this team's going to be when fully healthy, it's going to be, when it comes to the role players, a lot of guys are going to be playing a good amount of minutes. And I'm excited for that because Isaac Okoro in particular, we've talked about, okay, when he's not starting, can we get him comfortable? Can we keep him involved in the offense? And my kind of opinion on this has always been, it's about him getting enough minutes to be comfortable, not that he needs to be starting. If he's just entering the game for the first time in the second quarter and playing a 4-minute kind of spurt, that's tough. You're already out of your pregame rhythm. You're not going to feel comfortable. I think if he's getting more consistent minutes and getting more consistent minutes at the 2, I love what that can do for this team, because I thought Kenny really unlocked something with using him as a screener. And I think those horn sets and the 3-man actions with one big, the point guard and the shooting guard, makes so much sense if Isaac Okoro is out there able to set screens, able to roll to the basket and make passes out of those situations. And I think he is at his most effective defensively when he is guarding the two. So if he's playing as a shooting guard, all of a sudden you have a lot of length and strength at that shooting guard position.
Yeah, I think there's something to. I think one of the reasons I like Isaac at the 2 so much is in the way that this trade enables that to some extent, is that it feels nastier to me. It feels like you have a bulldog to go sick on these frail little guards on the other side of the court, you know? Whereas when he's playing the 3, and I don't subscribe to the idea that he doesn't guard threes well. I think, watching him play against Paolo last year, obviously, in the postseason kind of disproves that. However, there is I think an energy that comes with him being like this, I think he gets to be the physical tone setter against guards in a way where he's more just evenly matched and works really, makes the bigger wings work hard. I don't know. Is that nonsense?
No, doing a great job defensively and getting into their spots and disrupting their ability to get the shots up. That's really valuable. It's a different thing when you're bigger. When you are bigger than the man you are covering. That's when you get into that. And
that's been the gripe with a lot of people with this roster writ large, is there's just, there's so many times where, with really the exception of Evan, you look at the guy across from you and they're bigger than you. And I think I felt that against Orlando, with some of their ability to just duck in and fight for offensive boards. Felt that against Boston at times where, your core configuration, you might be bigger, but one injury, one sub, and all of a sudden you're smaller at 4 of the 5 positions. This kind of move just kind of upshifts your roster's size a little bit.
It also makes it that if you want to distill the rotation down to, a playoff 8, and we're talking about, if you really choose to, you can have it so that you can play 8 guys, and the only players that aren't plus defenders are Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. I think they are solid defenders, but the only guys that aren't flat out pluses on the defensive end would be them. Now, I still anticipate Kenny to go to 9. Even in the playoffs, I think Ty Jerome is going to have a spot. And if Ty Jerome is playing minutes, I think that means that we're still going to see Isaac play some 3. But we're just talking about what you are able to do here. This really gives you the ability to play larger, to insulate yourself on the defensive end. And when you play a team like Boston, who has playmaking threats and shot creation at every single position, now you have a counter to that. Now you have, here we go. We can throw out defenders at every single position and make you work. And DeAndre Hunter is someone that has made Boston work on both ends of the court. I think that's the other exciting thing about
a lot of Boston fans unhappy with this transaction, which is a good indicator.
Bill Simmons was not happy, which was a great sign. But he's someone that's had some playoff success too. He's played 16 playoff games, and these numbers are dragged down just a little bit from his first appearance where he was coming off of a knee injury. He had 10 points per game, but he was still efficient in that series. But if you look at the overall numbers for the 16 games, he's averaging 16 points per game in the playoffs, 4.6 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field and 40% from 3 on 5 attempts.
Bro, that's
great.
This is what I really wanted from this roster. And I forget who said it. Someone was aggregating some podcast in our Discord, and someone said that they felt like the Cavs went from 10 guys that they like to 8 guys that they love.
Mm-hmm.
And going into this summer, it's been very clear. We've been very public that both of us are big fans of the core 4, big fans of of guys like Isaac. And, it's not like we wanted to blow up the roster, but something I did want was more guys, at least at the Strus level of role player, because we saw Niang had a really, really rough playoffs. Mm-hmm. Harris had a rough playoffs. Dean had a rough playoffs. So I was just kind of waiting to see some kind of I felt like they had a bunch of guys who could help, but I didn't know would help. And I do feel like, and this isn't to say that, Max can't have a bad playoff series or Hunter can't have a bad playoff series, but writ large, I just generally think they're more matchup proof than the Cavs were going into the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, Hunter has had issues with injuries.
That was Tim Legler, by the way, on his pod.
He's a pretty smart guy. I think anytime we can quote him, that's usually a good practice. Hunter's had his issues with injuries. A lot of it's been wear and tear. I think some of that has been minimized this season by managing the minutes, managing the workload, which I think is going to continue here. But what I feel okay about is that's been the case with Karras. Like, Karras misses a good amount of time. I think it's very similar, but you're getting someone that's younger. You're getting someone that is really fitting a need. We talked before about Cam Johnson and the prospect of trading for him. One, I think he would have cost more, and I think that's why he ultimately was not moved at the deadline.
Which, by the way, I don't think DeAndre Hunter and Cam Johnson are meaningfully different level players.
I don't think so either. And I think from a need standpoint, I think Hunter fills those needs just a little bit more. Like, I think he's a better defensive player. He's not a strong rebounder. It would be nice if he was a better rebounder, but I think he's, comparable to Cam Johnson there. I think he might even be a little bit better. I think he's a little more physical.
I think I'll go so far as to say I think Hunter is better for what this team needs.
I think so too. I think he's a better fit, and I think they are very comparable players. I think Cam Johnson got a lot of attention because he was kind of that best name available before all of a sudden all these stars became available at the trade deadline. But Hunter has been right there for me, and I think even going back to the offseason when we were unsure of Isaac Okoro's contract situation, I remember saying, hey, if you don't feel comfortable extending him, I might be okay with moving him to go get a DeAndre Hunter. Having both, I'm thrilled about that. Like, I'm still a big believer in Isaac Okoro's potential, and I'm happy that we're getting to see this out a little bit longer. Obviously, we hope that the shoulder heals up and we get some real run there. But Kenny's going to have some difficult decisions when it comes to the rotation, because we've talked about all these guys that we're really excited about. And, you're going already to 9 and 10 in the rotation. And we haven't mentioned Sam Merrill, who's been playing really well for them lately. I'm intrigued to see how Kenny handles things when this roster is fully healthy, if we can get fully healthy. I think the biggest question is going to be, is DeAndre Hunter going to be starting at small forward for the Cavs?
Man, there's a lot of knock-on effects depending on what you do. Because if you start Hunter at the 3, then it's a lot easier to squeeze Merrill if you're looking to find someone to squeeze. Which, I guess that framing makes it seem nefarious. If you have to squeeze someone, then having Strus be your backup, 2, backup 3, it's easier. Having him fulfill the role of movement shooter. However, now Wade has to be your pure backup 4. You don't have any insurance there. Whereas if you start Strus, then you kind of can read the room on whether, and let Hunter be your first sub off the bench at the 3 or the 4. You can let him play with Wade. You have a little bit of flexibility. So I feel like Wade and Merrill are kind of the two fulcrums here, depending on who you start. I think it's easier to work in either one or work out either one depending on who you're starting.
I want to start this off by saying I think the best lineup that this team can put forward is with DeAndre Hunter at the 3, with the core 4, obviously. I think that is a lineup that works incredibly well. I am excited about what that lineup looks like. And the whole kind of Wade availability thing comes into question here, because if Wade is not in the lineup and you're starting DeAndre Hunter, you do not have that option at the backup 4, right? Like you can
stagger, you
can stagger a little bit, but at some point you're more than likely going to be playing with someone other than DeAndre Hunter at the 4. Like it's just,
it might be some Max Strus minutes, some Okoro minutes, etc.
Right. And I'm not completely opposed to that, right? We've talked about how Max played 30% of his minutes at power forward for the Miami Heat in his last season there. But I do think that is something worth considering. Now, the Cavs do have to make a roster decision. Within 14 days from the trade deadline, they have to make a move to get up to 14 players on the roster. That could mean promoting someone from the two-way. That could mean promoting someone from the charge. I saw Ethan Sands mention Naquan Tomlin as someone to keep an eye on, which I think he's probably someone to keep an eye on, whether that's a 10-day, like we saw them do last year with Pete Nance, where they were giving him some 10 days straight without giving him the two-way contract, or we promote someone on a two-way contract, whether that be Luke Travers, Amani Bates, or JT Thor. And then, give Tomlin that two-way contract. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. And I would say if we have, whether it's a buyout, whether it's a two-way guy, if you have someone that you feel comfortable playing as a backup for when Wade's not available, I'm okay with starting Hunter. I think it makes a lot of sense to do so. If you don't, I think that there is maybe a case for still starting Max for two reasons. One, because you have that flexibility with Hunter. And two, if you need to close the game with 7 minutes of your best lineup, I think it's easier to keep DeAndre Hunter at that 28-minute limit if he's not playing those minutes to start the game. You have a lineup that is doing very well with Max Strus at small forward. The funny thing, Carter, we talked about how that lineup wasn't that good last year.
Don't steal my thunder, Rowan. Don't steal it.
All right, go ahead.
I'm not so sure our best five is with Hunter at the 3. Because I think our starters have been so freaking good with Max. They have a plus 27.7 net rating so far this season. Even in games where the Cavs have gotten blown off the floor, that starting lineup is still winning their minutes. They are playing so well together that I'm not closed to the idea that Hunter makes them better, but I do kind of want to see him take it. I kind of want to see him prove it first before I pull Max out of the starting lineup. I don't know what Kenny's going to do, but
I think that's going to be what he's going to do, because that's what history shows us, right? Like when Max came back in the lineup, he's working on a minute restriction. All right, let's keep going with Wade, even though that lineup hasn't been as good. Let's keep starting Wade there. When Isaac
just a series of Wally pips every 3 weeks.
It really is. I wasn't going to steal your thunder, Carter, because I thought you were actually going to have your mind blown by this, because I know you were angsting a lot about the lineup data with Strus. If you take last year's possessions and you add this year's possessions, what would you guess the net rating is for that starting 5?
Well, it was like plus 5 or something last year, somewhere in there, like plus 5.5.
No, it's like plus 1.
Oh, really? I thought it was better than that. Either way,
let me look.
I thought it was
plus 2. It was
plus 2. It was plus 2. So it was not a great lineup. It wasn't bad, but starting lineups on good teams are supposed to. You want to kill people with those lineups. If I combine them both, it's plus 27 right now. It's plus 2. I'm gonna guess plus 9.
That's plus 7. You guessed high. You ruined the game. Anyways. That's really good, though. That's really, really damn good. That's already one of the best combinations when you look at the last 3 years for Core 4. And really, it's dragged down on the offensive end, which we know it's been absolutely phenomenal offensively this year with a 125 offensive rating. It's a 108 defensive rating with Max Strus, right? And that's a lot of where people's concerns come up.
And that's why I'm just not sure. And here's the thing, man. Hunter is a 6th Man of the Year candidate right now.
Yeah. Like, we don't want to mess up that award.
He clearly is comfortable coming off the bench. And I continue to think, I felt this way going into the playoffs last year before Jarrett's rib exploded and everyone got hurt and everything got ruined. I always felt like that small forward spot was the most fungible position for Kenny, like the one that was the most likely to be, hey, if we're playing Team A, if we're playing the Bucks, Okoro's getting the call. If we're playing the Celtics, Dean's getting the call. If we're playing, the Knicks, Max is getting the call. Whatever it is, I've always felt like that was the case going into last year's postseason. I still feel that. I still feel like, even if Max plays the next, 20, 30 games as the starting 3, and we go up against a series where Hunter is the right choice, I wouldn't be surprised to see that switch flipped. So, but right now, I think that starting lineup is cooking. I like all the optionality Hunter off the bench gives you, especially while Dean is hurt. and while Okoro is hurt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just not rushing to put him in the starting lineup.
I'm not rushing either, but I'm going to plant my flag here. And you know, I've been a Max Strus defender. He's one of my favorite role players that the Cavs have ever had. And my instinct is to defend him in this instance, to talk about, you know, how good this lineup is. Our friend of the podcast and our buddy, Anthony Lima, is running his anti-Strus campaign. And my instinct is to double down and say, you know, stick with this plus 30 lineup. Let's make it happen. I'm planting my flag, though. I think the best 5 is with DeAndre Hunter at the 3. But for all the reasons we've talked about, I could see it kind of be slow played here, right? Of, all right, let's get him integrated to the team. Dean's not available yet, although I was really encouraged to see Chris Fedor's report that he is no longer feeling any stiffness in the knee. He's been ramping up activity and could be returning soon. I think we only have 3 games before the All-Star break, so this is really, really nice.
I'm not ready.
Here.
We just got a new toy, and I gotta wait a whole week.
Yeah, and only 3 games in like the next 8 days. We usually play like 7. What's going on here? So I can see it kind of being slow played. You know, maybe the All-Star break is a nice time for this, right? Because they're going to have some time off. They're going to have a couple practices before they return to action, and maybe we see
unfortunately the entire coaching staff's going to be coaching at the All-Star game, so they won't get any game planning time.
Hey, Kenny will, because he's still going to be with Darius Donovan.
That's fair.
He's going to keep those guys accountable out there. I think that Hunter is going to be, you know, their best option at the small forward. I'm insanely excited to see what that means. Getting someone like, he's probably longer than Lowry, even though Lowry's 7 feet. With that 7'2" wingspan, it's at least going to be about the same, and he's a lot quicker moving his feet. I'm excited with what this means for Max Strus. Like, if Max is coming in as a super sub and gunning away, you know, playing kind of as a 3-2 rather than consistently kind of playing up as a front court player, that's exciting. Isaac Okoro, if he gets to play at a position where he has a physical advantage and can really disrupt guards, and hey, you're playing 15 to 20 minutes a night, go apply full court pressure. Go make life hell. Go be Jalen Suggs out there defensively. I think sometimes he's been asked to, you know, guard small forwards, so you're not able to do that full court pressure with him. And he's also playing so many minutes that you can't really do that. In shorter bursts, why not? Why not throw Isaac out there and disrupt teams the way that we've seen, like the Andrew Nemhards, despite his tiny size, disrupt the Cavs at times. There's a lot of optionality for Kenny Atkinson. I'm curious to see how he approaches this, but I do think Boston's still going to be the favorite, but I think we have made a step in the right direction that gives us a better chance to play against them, to honestly to score against them, even though he's not going to provide playmaking. Like, having someone that's averaging 19 points per game in 28 minutes a night, that has had success in the playoffs against Boston, that's had success in multiple matchups in the playoffs, like, that's not something we should just take for granted.
No, he is a bona fide scorer. He's really, I mean, the pull-up game is really strong. He is someone who can score at the rim. He can really shoot the ball, man. You know, so many of these shot attempts were him just sprinting to the corner in transition, you know, and the Cavs are just going to give him a litany of open looks. And when he gets closed out on hard, he's going to have a lot of straight line drives to the basket open to him. So, you know, I think he's going to be great. I did want to say, I know we're getting near the end of this. It is clear, like, you know, for as much as the Cavs have surprised us with some of the transactions they've made, I'll tell you what, when Kobe likes a role player, we know about it. You know, you hear about it, and eventually he's going to get that dude. You know, like, they tried to get Ty Jerome. He ended up signing with Golden State. They get him the next year. They wanted, DeAndre Hunter had been on their radar for a while. They go get him. Lauri Markkanen, he was a big fan of for years. He goes and gets him. Like, I do feel like this team, as mostly leak-proof as they've been, they've showed their hand. And, like, Kobe does have a real point of view here. When he likes a guy, he really does keep tabs on him and waits for an opportunity to pounce.
Yeah, and I think this also ties into what we've talked about in the past, where part of why we felt good about the Donovan trade, part of why we felt good about some of these consolidation moves is Kobe finds so many different ways to find value in the margins, whether it's undrafted players, whether it is finding ways to get into a 3-team deal and get Jared Allen for just a first-round pick, whether it's, finding value in getting a Karis LeVert to fill a role, to get DeAndre Hunter here without giving up a first-round pick, with limited assets to go out and get DeAndre Hunter. Not only that, but opening up the ability to use the mid-level exception to add even more depth to this team. And DeAndre Hunter, when you look at the future money, in all likelihood, we're going to be a second apron team next year. But we haven't started the clock on the repeater tax, which is really important. And one of the things that we've seen with the second apron, as we start to get our footing in this environment, because you can't really combine salaries together, and some of your ability to make trades in that gets screwed around with, having multiple tradable contracts is really important. And when you have a bunch of guys that are on kind of these mid-level-ish contracts, gives you some flexibility. You might want to use that. You might want to use, your early bird rights on Ty Jerome to retain him, and add a player with the mid-level exception, even though you're going to be a second apron team no matter what. Let's just sprint past it, because we're going to have all these contracts that we can play with if we do need to make an adjustment. I just think they are in a position where they have improved the short term and they've improved the long term. They've maintained their flexibility. You still have a cost-controlled rookie that's looked pretty, encouraging in recent games. You still have Craig Porter Jr., who's a cost-controlled point guard that has obviously benefited from his time developing with the Charge. It's a really, really, really good job working in the margins. And you're right. We do hear about, the LeVerts and the Hunters early, because I think they do a thorough when they really want someone, they do a thorough job vetting it. Chris Fedor has been all over this, where he's talked about how the Cavs have been calling about Hunter, really doing their homework for about a month now to investigate how this is going to work, how this is going to be from a locker room standpoint. What are his physicals like? When they want to make a move, they're not just flying by the seat of their pants here. They're going to really do their homework and make sure that with the limited assets we have, let's maximize our return every single time.
One thing I wanted to hit on that you mentioned about the fact that, while you're in the apron, having these kind of mid-level players that allows you to kind of duck the limitations of being a second apron team. I think it's really important to note that we've seen other second apron teams or teams on the periphery sign guys that as far as you can tell, they don't really think are worth the money just to have a tradable asset. You look at KJ Martin in Philly, ends up getting salary dumped. Josh Okogie in Phoenix. These guys are getting Zeke Naji in Denver. Guys that are getting contracts that have outpaced their production or expected value over the life of the contracts, just to give teams flexibility to basically make transactions. Whereas the Cavs kind of get to have the best of both worlds, because if they don't want to make transactions, all these dudes are good and helpful.
They're all on fair market value or, even team-friendly contracts.
Yeah. So, I just thought that was one noteworthy thing is, not only do the Cavs have that, compared to their other soon-to-be peers in the second apron, they'll have more depth than all of them.
Yeah. It's a really, really good position to be in. We'll see what happens, on the buyout market. I think it's noteworthy too.
Probably have to talk buyout market at some point here.
Yeah, there's been some names out there. Ben Simmons has been mentioned, linked with the Cavs. Torrey Craig had been scooped up by the Celtics. So we'll see what ends up materializing with the buyout market. What players are bought out. So I don't really want to go too in depth with that yet, but I do think it's worth noting, Carter. Last year, we felt like we were on the outside looking in the trade deadline, where just weren't options available. We had limited assets. All those factors that led to them not making a move at the deadline. I think it's important to note none of the other contenders made a move. None of them made a trade to get better. Some of them even did some cost-cutting maneuvering and little things like that. That's really, really damn important. And I think that is a luxury of the situation that we're in, where we're not a second apron team yet, so we can find ways to do a little bit of maneuvering. OKC, for whatever reason, decided they didn't want to disrupt their chemistry and use some of the massive pile of first-round picks that they have to go get a Cam Johnson. I think that is a win for the Cavs. I think, Boston not making a trade to get better. New York not making a trade to get better, right? Like, we were wondering if the Knicks were going to do something with Mitchell Robinson or if they were going to add some depth. They traded away Jericho Sims instead. Like, I think it's been a very, very lucky and fortunate day for the Cavs across the board in that they were able to pull off a move to get their top target, and none of the other contenders pulled off a move that is going to change their championship odds.
Yeah, just look at the Cavs peers in the Eastern Conference right now. New York is already 10 million into the first apron. Milwaukee 6 million into the first apron. Boston is 15 million into the first apron. Like, and the Cavs are sitting here, they're not even going to be a tax team, let alone an apron team. And obviously that's going to change as these extensions kick in. But like I've said it 1,000 times at this point, I do think there is part of this CBA which is going to be a battle against. It's just going to be a battle of attrition. All these other teams that don't have meaningful ways to improve, that cannot afford one of their players getting old, getting hurt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Cavs just have more margin for error than these teams right now. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to blow this team up in the offseason. I didn't want to make these big changes because I saw all these other teams staring down the barrel of really limiting things. Like the Celtics trade Jaden Springer yesterday. He's a helpful, developmental player for them that the fan base is fond of, and they trade him into space and attach capital to get off of him just to lessen their limitations moving forward.
Yeah, it's they're in a really, really good position here. And, with the Hunter contract, they're going to be right under the second apron when they fill out the roster. I think they're going to go above it. But I think it's worth noting, these guys are all kind of locked in on their contracts. Like, we're going to approach the second apron with Mobley jumping up. Hunter, Strus, Okoro, Tyson, all these guys are cost-controlled guys that are locked in here. The apron's going to jump even more. Like, the apron's going to jump 26, 27.
It's going to jump commensurate with the cap.
Right. So it's going to go up another 30 million, I believe, if you're looking at the 25-26 to the 26-27. When you have all these guys locked up, you might actually have some flexibility. It might just be 1 year that you're a second apron team. And we know that, what Bobby Marks has talked about is the harshest penalties come when you spend more than 2 years out of 5 in that second apron threshold. They might have a lot of kind of flexibility to only be up in there for a year or 2 years here, right? Like they're going to have some optionality here with the roster. And I just think having the core locked up, having your top 3-4 role guys locked up for the next few years, having cost-controlled Jalen Tyson, having cost-controlled Craig Porter Jr., Dean Wade on a valuable contract, they're just in such a good position here. And I'm really excited to see what they can do with this current roster. And if changes are necessary, I think that they've left themselves in a position to make those.
Yeah, I don't know, man. My trust in this front office to steward them, to steward the franchise through a complicated cap era is so high. I just think they're smart. I think they're organized, and I think they are thoughtful about not just short-term ramifications, but mid and long-term ramifications too. And, there were iterations of this team that I don't know if I could have said that about. So
yeah,
it's just really, really nice. By the way, how about all the whiners talking about how no trades were going to get done, no changes, CBA too hard.
Adam Silver out here dunking on Super Bowl week.
Everyone apologized.
He got his revenge for Christmas. NFL tried to encroach on Christmas. We came out here and we ruined Super Bowl week. How about that? No one's even thinking about it.
Everyone apologized to CJ McCollum right now.
I love it. You're so right, though, man. I think that's an important note to close it up on. If the Cavs, I really hope, and I do believe that this is the case, that they've changed their perception, right? Because coming out of the 4 straight finals run everyone kind of felt that this was just, a franchise that was lifted up by LeBron. And I think what you have seen from a stability standpoint, from the types of gambles that they've taken, how they've pivoted when those moves haven't worked out, how they've found ways to, tune out the outside noise, weather the storm, have real kind of strong core beliefs in what they're building and a completed picture in their mind of what they're building, right? And if something's not working towards that vision, we're willing to be patient and we're willing to wait to go get our guy. We've been trying to get DeAndre Hunter for a few years. We waited until the moment was right and we made it happen. I think from top down, like from an ownership standpoint, to Kobe Altman, to Mike Gansey, like all the organization is just in such a healthy place, and both on and off the court. And like you said, I don't think in our entire time following this team and caring about this team, I don't know if you could always say that, but it's a really, really, really impressive job that this team has done. And I'm excited to see what the remainder of the season can be.
Yeah. What a treat this deadline was for Cavs fans. You get better for now, you get more flexible for the future. I just let's go make a run. We're ready, baby.
Go make a damn run. Let's go get those Celtics. Let's hopefully everyone's healthy. I'm glad that we're playing them Boston again at the end of February. I'm really excited to see how that game goes. Really, really, really excited. I just keep repeating it. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. Big thanks to everyone watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.